This is the Louie T Network.
I'm ready for some football. I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
Overtime! So we head to overtime.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Sunday Night Football Overtime. Packers, Falcons, rematch of the NFC Championship game in 2016. And remember, these two teams played in the regular season last year. It was a great football game. Falcons were able to pull it out late in that ball game. They do it again here. Remember, they blew out this Green Bay Packers team in the playoffs, but a very, very different, vastly different Packers team in 2017. Much better defensively, at least that's what we thought. Coming into this game, a ton of injuries for the Packers. Coming into the game, a ton of injuries leaving the game for the Packers. Falcons sustained some injuries. We'll try to get to all of those as we get through this breakdown. But all in all, when it came down to getting a stop late in this ball game and getting the football back to Aaron Rodgers and to see if they could maybe put some pressure and maybe have the Falcons succumb to some of that pressure that saw them lose Super Bowl 51, they weren't able to do it. Falcons able to get the necessary first downs to really bleed the clock and put this game away 34-23. We'll get into the specifics of how that win was attained by the Falcons in this breakdown as we normally do. First and foremost, I want to thank each and every single one of you for joining me tonight on the program. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content in 2017 and beyond. We're changing the game here on the Louie T Network. Want you to help us do that by simply hitting that subscribe button and becoming a member of the Louie T Network. Also, I'm on Twitter at In the Lab Room is the Twitter handle. Also on Facebook, In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. Go ahead and give me a like there. And on Instagram as well, it's with the Z _ me, Louie T, on IG. Find me and follow me there as well. So let's get to the winners in this game. To the victors go the spoils. We start with the Atlanta Falcons, who run their record to 2-0 on the season with the 34-23 victory over the Green Bay Packers. I thought the run game was very effective. And we'll start on the offensive side of the football because there's some question marks on the defensive side of football. We'll get to those a little bit later on. But the offense has been the catalyst for this football team. Make no mistake about it. They were the driving force last year to the run to the Super Bowl. If they're going to get back there again, they're going to have to be the driving force yet again. And last week, weren't that impressive. If you watched that game versus the Bears, the offense left a lot to be desired in that football game, but you had to know they would come out a lot more aggressive. Felt like last week was more of a situation kind of playing down to the level of competition. Week one, you really don't know what to expect, and I thought that they came out a little flat, and they weren't the team offensively that we were expecting. You knew that they had to be better against Aaron Rodgers and company, and they were going to have to score a lot more than the 23 last week that they scored in order to win this game. And so you knew they were going to come out, new stadium, Sunday Night Football, prime time, Aaron Rodgers, a lot of people thinking maybe the Packers can come in there and steal one. They were going to be a lot better, a lot sharper, a lot crisper on offense. And this was going to be a nice test for Sark, the new offensive coordinator, Steve Sarkisian, to see how he would come out and call this game. Would he be aggressive? Would he go after this Packers secondary that is still very, very young? Or would he be a little bit more reserved in his play calling? I thought early on he did a really good job of getting the run game involved, getting Devontae Freeman and company, The Rock, early getting them involved, and then allowing Matt Ryan to use play action fake to get guys open over the middle of the field, open some things up. I thought they did a good job early of mixing in different types of plays so that you couldn't really key in on what they were doing, getting Gabriel on a little jet sweep early down inside the red zone to set up the first touchdown of the game. All of these things I thought were nice little wrinkles within the offensive structure and flow to kind of keep the Packers off balance. And as you saw late in the ball game, they came with a play where Mohamed Sanu is in the Wildcat and Matt Ryan split all the way outside on a key third down in order to pick up a first down running the football, because again, Mohamed Sanu can throw the football, ex-college quarterback at Rutgers. So this is a guy that has a little bit of diversity there, and so they hand it off to Devontae Freeman. He picks up the first down. That was a crucial first down and basically iced the game. So I love the wrinkles that Sark came with in this game. They did a really good job of, like I said, keeping the Packers kind of off balance and getting mismatches, moving Julio around, sending him in motion so that they can't jam him at the line of scrimmage, giving him a free release. Love all of these different things that they did in this football game. Still waiting for them to take those deep shots down the field that we saw a season ago in that Kyle Shanahan offense, when you run it, set up, play action, fake, and then you take the deep shot to Julio or the deep shot to Gabriel. But it was nice to see a lot of different guys get involved. Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Guess who? Mohamed Sanu, I thought, was huge in this football game, catching the rock. Also, of course, Julio Jones, always a factor. Even when he doesn't touch the rock, he's still garnering attention. So he's always a big-time a player on this field for the Atlanta Falcons in any game that he steps foot on the field. Also, nice to see Justin Hardy get the football. I wanted him to get in the end zone there. I always like when he touches the football as well. So you're seeing a lot of guys touch the rock. Gabriel, like I said, is a guy that is an instrumental in what they do offensively, because he adds another element of speed on that football team at the receiving position. So thought the Falcons did some good things on the ground. Good to see Tevin Coleman get involved. I didn't feel like he got involved enough last week in the football game. Good to see him get that one run. I thought that got his juices flowing in this game, where he's able to kind of play it slow, then cut it back, get a big gain. He caught the touchdown pass right before the half after the turnover by the Packers, which I thought was the game-changing point in this ball game, because if you go to halftime just up 17-7, I think it's a different ball game. Packers are still in it. You never know what will happen in the second half. But because the Packers made that critical mistake, and it's the second week in a row where the Packers are involved in a little bit of controversy with the referees. We know about the pick six last week against Seattle and the penalty that followed thereafter that negated the touchdown, and the no call in the end zone on the pass interference on Jimmy Graham. And so this is the second week that they were shrouded in a little bit of a situation where you look at the referees and say, was that the right call? It really impacted the game. You get the big 36-yard chunk play to Cobb that's called back because of OPI for a pick play on Bennett. Was it a pick? I'm not so sure if I'm buying the whole pick angle there. I mean, you could argue it was a pick. I didn't think it was necessarily a pick, but again, you know how this league is. It's a subjective call. They called it a pick, so be it. That just because they called that a pick doesn't mean the next play you get to throw an interception, which is what essentially Aaron Rodgers did on the deep ball, trying to hit Geronimo Allen up over the top, picked off by Desmond Trufant. Good to see him back, like I said last week versus the Bears. He's a big part of this defense, and that allowed the Falcons to get the football again. And like I said, this offense did a really good job of taking advantage of situations. You get that short field, 4 plays, 36 yards, boom, you're in the end zone. Tevin Coleman, touchdown, 24-7. To me, that's where the Falcons really separated themselves in the game. And then you come out, get the turnover in the second half, and that was a freaky play. You don't see that very often. Vic Beasley just destroying Aaron Rodgers, and he's trying to throw the football. Is it a lateral? I couldn't tell, and because they left it as a lateral on the field in a fumble, they kept it as a touchdown for Trufant, who had an interception and a fumble return in this game. And that fumble return was for a touchdown. And I thought that was the game changer. That was the backbreaker after already connecting on a field goal to start the third quarter. You come out, you get that scoop and score on the fumble. And that was the last of the scoring for the Falcons in this game. But they didn't need to do much more after that, as they were up huge in the game at that point. And so they had pretty much put the Packers to rest with that final touchdown. And so defensively, you look at them in this game, and I thought they made plays defensively, and that was the difference. The Packers didn't make plays in this game, and the Falcons did make plays in this game. I thought that the Packers did some okay things on the ground, And this is a very small Falcons defense. They're fast, they're physical, but they're small. And if you can get a hat on a hat, you can run the football versus this defense. I thought the Packers actually did that early in the game. On that opening possession where they moved it down the field, a lot of what they did on that possession was Ty Montgomery, whether it was him catching the football and that looked like a busted coverage, someone not covering him out of the backfield, but he runs out into the flats unmolested, unabated, and catches the football, turns up, gets down to about the 2-yard line. He ends up running it in. But also on that drive, he ran the football effectively. I felt like if they could continue to do that throughout the course of the game, it was going to open up some opportunities down the field. But it just never came to fruition. And then once guys started going down, they started losing key pieces of their football team. I thought the Falcons did a great job of taking advantage of guys being injured and being a little bit more aggressive, coming after Aaron Rodgers, not allowing him to get comfortable, not allowing them to really rely on the run game as a crutch. And most importantly, and this is what you have to do against prolific offenses, get off the field on third downs. They did that in this game, in addition to creating turnovers. When you get an opportunity to force a turnover versus a good football team, you must take full advantage. I talk about this every single week in all of these games. I watch teams squander opportunities, drop interceptions, force fumbles, but they don't recover. Situations where opportunities present themselves for you to create turnovers that can change the game, and teams simply don't take advantage. Or if you do create a turnover, you're not getting points out of the deal. If you create a short field for your offense via special teams or defense, you got to take advantage. And week after week, we see teams squander those opportunities. Well, the Falcons did not do that in this game. They got off the field on third downs. They were able to create some turnovers and some short fields for their offense. They were able to scoop and score a fumble, which put points on the scoreboard. They were able to do all of the things necessary in this game. If the Packers made a mistake on an OPI that put them behind the down and distances on the football field, they were able to get off the field, or they were able to create a turnover thereafter after the Packers tried to get it all back right before the half. That's what you have to do if you want to beat the better teams in this league, and the Falcons simply did that. And again, I felt bad for the Packers for the second year in a row. They were asked on week 2 to go to someone else's stadium on the road on Sunday night and open up a brand new stadium. It's tough to do that every single year and be that team that the league says, hey, you're a great attraction. Let's bring you to this team stadium and open it up in week 2. And they had to do it last year versus Minnesota. Didn't work out. I had a feeling the same thing would happen here. They met the same fate. This game was not close as the one last year was a lot closer. This one was not close as the Packers were devoured early, and they made a go of it in the fourth quarter. But by then, this game had already gotten out of control. It was already 34-10 at one point, heading into the fourth quarter. And for all intents and purposes, if you're a Falcons fan, and they made jokes and made light of it during the telecast that maybe the Falcons fans are tight. They probably weren't tight. Some of them might have been tight, but to me, once they didn't get the 2-point conversion and it was still a 3-score game, you had to feel good that you pretty much had this game right where you wanted. Had they converted that 2-point conversion after the first touchdown in the fourth quarter, then maybe there would have been something to talk about then, because then it would have been a two-possession game. And then they did ultimately score another touchdown. And had they scored that touchdown and got that 2-point conversion, then you're looking at a totally different. Maybe the Falcons then feel the pressure, but I never once felt like the Packers have a legitimate shot of coming back in this game. And so kudos to the Falcons for getting it done on both sides of the football. It was a dominating performance, and they got the win to move their record to 2-0 with a 34-23 victory over the Packers. We talk about the Packers quickly before we get to your comments. We'll start with the Packers on the offensive side of football. Laundry list of injuries for this Packers team. You start with them coming into the game with neither one of their starting tackles. Both left and right tackles were out of this game, which always spells trouble for a team right off the bat. It's always great to have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who is a maestro, who can figure out how to escape the pocket and extend plays despite not having his starting tackles on both sides. But that puts you at a disadvantage. It takes some things that maybe you wanted to do out of the playbook. Not a lot of deep drops. You're going to probably lose 20% of your eligibles, if not 40% of your eligibles, because you don't want to basically have Aaron Rodgers dropping back too far in the pocket and not having his tackles have help. So you're going to keep your running back in the chip. You're going to keep a tight end in the chip, or you're going to at least have them chip on their way out, which is going to not have them get out into the passing routes as quickly as you would like them to. So it does put you at a disadvantage when both your left and right tackle are both guys that you shouldn't have starting for you going into a big game like this. So they were already at a disadvantage. Then you lose Jordy Nelson essentially after the first possession of the game. That's a huge injury because it changes the dynamics of that Packers offense totally. It's one thing to lose your left and right tackle and not have them for the game. It's another thing to lose the best pass catcher you got. And they showed the graphic about how prolific Rodgers and Nelson are together. And you take that away from this offense, and we saw the impact that his injury had a couple of seasons ago when he was out for the entire season with a torn ACL. We saw the impact that it had on the offense and how it just wasn't the same. And so you saw it tonight. I mean, they tried to make do with not having Nelson out on the football field, but we know that this Packers offense can be way more prolific than just 10 points through 3 quarters. But fact of the matter is, Jordy Nelson was on the field for that first possession. They moved it right down the field. He changes what defenses have to do. You take him off the field, and they never had another drive the entire night that looked as clean and sharp as that opening drive. Now, you could chalk it up to Nelson being on the field. You could chalk it up to that being game planning and the first 15 plays being scripted. You can chalk it up to whatever you like, nerves on the part of the Falcons defenders, and then they settled in and that stopped. Whatever the case may be, Jordy Nelson only played one possession. Packers scoring that possession. You call it what you want. They lose a number of players throughout the course of the game. Bryce, their safety, goes out. One of the biggest injuries outside of the Nelson injury is probably the best defensive player they have along that defensive line, and Daniels goes out with an injury. So they left this game battered and bruised. They even ended up losing Randall Cobb later on in the game with an injury. Don't know the severity of any of these injuries to any of these players. Of course, if you're a Packers fan, you'll be holding your breath and hoping that a lot of these injuries are minor and that they're guys that will be able to return to the lineup sooner rather than later. But this is a battered and bruised team leaving this football game. Not only did their egos get battered and bruised in this game by being handled the way that they did by the Falcons in this contest, but they left this game battered and bruised from a standpoint of just players. And they got Cincinnati coming in. They're hungry. They're 0-2. They haven't scored a touchdown all season long on the offensive side of the football. They're desperate for a win. They've made a ton of changes. They fired their offensive coordinator. They're going to come to Green Bay, to Lambeau, looking to try to make a statement. There's a lot of friction going on in that locker room. The only way to galvanize that football team is to go out and win in Green Bay. So you're going to have to play much better than you did tonight, obviously, if you're looking to get a win against the all of a sudden desperate Cincinnati Bengals at home. But offensively, I thought that you saw some good performances from some guys. It's always good to see young guys step in and give you some quality snaps. Geronimo Allison, it continues to be a revelation for this team. You kind of uncovered him and unearthed that gem last year. He continues to play solid football for you in the absence of Jordy Nelson. He came in. I thought he was solid for you. You still got to figure out how to get Martellus Bennett acclimated to this offense. I think you tried to force it to him a little bit tonight, and it didn't work early in the game. And then you got all these tight ends. I just feel like this team needs to be more able to get them integrated to this offense without trying to force it. You've got all these different weapons. The tight ends should just seamlessly transition into the offense. And it seems like when they do get the tight ends the ball, it's a concerted effort to get them the football. It seems forced at times. And I just want to see them work the tight ends into this offense. Like early on when they got the football to Richard Rodgers, that's always refreshing. And that looked like it was within the scheme and the flow of the game. It seems like when they try to get the ball to Martellus Bennett, it's forced. Like, hey, we're going to go to Bennett here. It doesn't matter what the coverage is. We're going to try to get him the football. And it didn't work out again tonight. And so he continues to struggle in his first 2 games as a Green Bay Packer. We'll see if next week's game brings a little bit more success for him as a Packer. But they're still trying to work him into this offense. And I felt like the run game was good on that opening possession, but was never really the same in terms of an impact on this game. So that's something else they need to iron out. Again, when you got two rookies or a second-year guy in Murphy at left tackle and a rookie out at right tackle, kind of hard to really blame them for anything that they may have had not go their way offensively. No excuses. Injuries happen in this league. Next man up, yada, yada, yada. But it's a tough go of it when both your starting tackles are taken from you. It really limits what you want to do offensively, and you got to be careful because, again, Aaron Rodgers took some shots tonight. And some of it had to do with the inexperience of the offensive lineman in front of him. Some of it had to do with the fact that no Jordy Nelson on the field, and they took away some of his options, and he had to hold on to the ball a bit longer. He definitely took some hits tonight. And credit and hats off to that Falcons defense for applying that pressure and forcing the issue and making him take some shots and make some mistakes in this football game. You get to the Packers on the defensive side of things. Like I talked about, Mike Daniels out of the game. That hurts. That was very early. It might have been the first possession of the game where he injures his hamstring. So you take him out of the mix, and all of a sudden now you're not the same team up front. You got pressure early, but it didn't last. You were able to get to Ryan early in this game, but all in all, he was pretty comfortable throughout the night, was able to survey the field, find the right target, and deliver the football. Even in the latter stages of this game when you needed a stop, and they were able to still run the football with some success. But even when you had them backed up because of a false start penalty or whatever the case may be, you still weren't able to stop them. Those in cuts, those in breaking routes, a lot of what the Packers have done I've seen early on in this season, they love using that lurker over the middle of the field, which is usually Clinton Dix, to undercut those in breaking routes. And they just, you didn't have an answer because you were so focused on Julio Jones, and rightfully so. Man's a beast. Got to figure out where he is on the field and make sure you try to take him away. The other guys were getting you, like Gabriel, like Mohamed Sanu. And so defensively, it's a young defense. And so you expect these types. I thought Kevin King actually handled himself well. Like, he was going up against one of the league's best, if not the league's best receiver in Julio Jones for most of the night. I thought he handled himself very well. I thought he battled. Julio got the best of him a couple of times, but you expect that. But I thought he was right there on a number of plays. And so hats off to him. He's a guy that I think is going to get better and better as he plays more and more. I like what they have out there in Green Bay. It's just a matter of time before these guys start to gel. Now, there are some guys that I think just simply aren't good enough, that they're going to get beat consistently in that secondary. But for the most part, it's a secondary that's extremely talented. They have some parts. And if they can just get consistent pressure on the quarterback, which Mike Daniels not being in the lineup really hurt them from that standpoint. They talked about it during the telecast, and those are just straight facts. He collapses the pocket. He wins. We saw him. He made the biggest play defensively last week versus Seattle with his strip sack forced fumble of Russell Wilson. He's an impact player. You take him out of that lineup, it changes the dynamics of that defense. And you saw that in this ball game. I thought the Falcons were able to run the football effectively for the majority of the night. Okay. I thought the Falcons were able to pass the football with great success. Matt Ryan, for the most part, had time in the pocket all night long, was able to survey the field, and like I said, get the football to the right man. If they took Julio away, fine, I'll go to Sanu. You want to take Julio and Sanu away, fine, I'll go to Gabriel. You want to take all those guys away, fine, I'll go to Hardy. He did a good job of spreading the football around and making the Packers pay when they had defensive breakdowns, and they were exceptional tonight. And like I said, if you're the Packers, you chalk this one up to you just got beat by a better team that had healthy football players. And yes, the Falcons had some injuries in the game themselves. They lose their right tackle to a concussion on the first possession of the game. As a matter of fact, the first touchdown of the game, that's the play that Ryan Schrader got injured on. They also lost another one of their players, maybe even a couple of their players throughout the course of the game. But the Packers were more impacted by their injuries than the Falcons were in this game, but it doesn't matter. The better team won the game tonight, and that was the Atlanta Falcons. They played better in every phase of the game, offensively, defensively, special teams. They get the win 34-23. Do the Atlanta Falcons. If you're the Packers, you go home and you hope that the vast majority of those injuries aren't serious and aren't going to keep those players out for any amount of time, because again, a lot of crucial players on your football team did not finish this game. So you're hoping, if you're the Packers, that those injuries aren't as serious as we are led to believe. That being said, let's get to your comments and see what you guys have to say about the outcome of this game. The best part of the game for me was the first touchdown of the game and the NBC crew playing the NBA on NBC theme music. That was dope. I loved it. And me being an old school, an old head when it comes to sports and in basketball in particular, that was my heyday. That was my favorite period of basketball. And it brings back so many fond memories hearing that music. And so that was dope. In any event, Andrew Kim says, got to give props for the Packers coming back with a slew of injuries. Both starting tackles, Jordy, Cobb, out late in their game. Falcons offense is still consistent without Shanahan. You knew they would continue to be consistent just because they've got the weapons. It's not like Shanahan made this offense with a lack of weaponry, and he made this offense more prolific because he's a great play caller. He added to what they had, and I'll tell you this much. He gave them something they lacked before he got there. He gave them confidence. I think they feel like they're the best offense in the league. They've got the MVP, the reigning MVP in Matt Ryan. They've got arguably the best receiver in the league. They've got a really good backfield, a two-headed monster, maybe the best two-headed monster in all of football, with Freeman and Coleman in the backfield. They love their receivers. They feel like Mohamed Sanu is one of the better number twos in the league. They like what they're getting out of Gabriel, and their tight end position is starting to evolve with Hooper. And so they feel like they've got a really great offense. And I think what Shanahan did in his 2 years there is that or was it 1 year? I think it was 2 years. But in any event, what Shanahan did coming there, and it was 2 years because I remember the first year everybody was saying was that playbook too much for Matt Ryan to digest. In his 2 years there, I think what he did was he instilled confidence that, look, you guys are among the best in the league offensively, and we're going to go out and prove that. And so, yes, they're still going to be good, but I still think they're going to miss Shanahan. I still don't see it, and maybe we'll see it as the season progresses, or maybe that's just not what Sark likes to do. I still haven't seen them really drive the football down the field. Remember how big chunk plays, deep ball, play action fake plays, 60 and 50 and 70-yard quick strike touchdowns were a part of this offense last year. I still haven't really seen that this year. Obviously, you get the off-schedule Austin Hooper touchdown in Week 1 versus Chicago. I'm not talking about plays like that. I'm talking about play action fake, stick the ball in the belly of the running back, pull it out, look up top to Julio, look up top to Gabriel, and boom, just like that, 56-yard touchdown. You got a touchdown on the scoreboard. I haven't seen that in this offense yet, and that to me is the element that they're missing right now. Appreciate that, Greg Brewer. Falcons Fury says, "Hey, bruh, run that game. Hey, bruh, that run game came in handy. Sadly, injuries played a big part in this game for both sides." Absolutely. The run game was huge. Especially for the Falcons. I thought they ran the football, especially late in the game when they had to put this thing away. And they were exceptional. They made plays throughout this game on the ground. I thought the injuries were really, it took away from the luster of this game, especially for the Packers side of things, to not have either one of your tackles, to lose your best receiver, to lose your best defensive player, to lose your second best receiver. I mean, they really were hampered by injuries in this game, and it showed up on the scoreboard literally 34-10 after three quarters. We know the Packers are better than that, but they didn't have the weaponry necessary. Not enough bullets in the gun to get it done in this football game. But credit to the Falcons. I don't give a damn who's on the field. You still got to go out and take care of business, and that they did in this ball game. So, Blackbird Blitz, you're funny. And you know what? Sometimes I feel the same exact way. But anyway. LL says, that defense is young and good. I can't wait until they mature a bit. And did you get my picks for week 2? I'm not sure. I never look at the picks until it's time to look at the picks. So, I never know what I've done. I don't know what anybody else has done, because when you are accustomed to picking winners, you don't need to go back and look at your picks all the time to see if I pick winners. So every pick that I make, I expect it to be a winner. So I don't need to go back and look. I'll just sort out the winners from the losers when when I get there, and we'll talk about it then. So I probably did get your picks, but I can't say for sure, 100% certainty if I got your picks. If you put them where you're supposed to put them and you put them there, then I got your picks. But this defense in Atlanta is very young. They're very fast. They're very physical. That's why there's a lot of hope for this football team, because they have all of the pieces necessary to be an aggressive defense that can really control ball games. We'll see how they continue to mature, though. That's going to be the key. And can they stay healthy, obviously, is another big key for them as well. Falcon Fury says, hey, man, half they points came off of prevent defense. Can't do that BS versus the bad man. It is what it is. Obviously, late in the game, you just want to keep everything in front of you. You don't want to give up big plays like you did on the 4th down to Devontae Adams for the touchdown. You want to eliminate those types of plays. You want to make them earn everything and be methodical. And that's basically what they did late in the ball game. Is the Falcons defense said, look, you can have the underneath stuff. We'll give you a couple of chunk plays here and there, but we're not going to allow you to quick strike us. And it is what it is. Aaron Rodgers will take advantage of that. He'll take what you give him. But, the Falcons defensively, they'll give that up, because they knew at that point in the game, the only thing that could hurt them were turnovers, quick 3-and-outs in which they stop the clock themselves, or the Packers scoring quickly. And that wasn't going to happen if they allowed everything to just stay in front of them. So that's what you got to do in a situation like that. Bossaholic says, I usually don't mind game commentary, but goddamn, do they have to shove the Super Bowl? I told you that this is going to be the case in week 1. They remember how the Patriots were trolling you guys, and I actually tweeted out like, damn, are they ever going to let that go? Obviously, the first week of the season, yeah, it's fresh. They're not going to let it go yet, but you're going to keep hearing about this because it was such an epic comeback. And trust me, you think that was bad. Wait till these two teams play on Sunday night, 4 weeks from now? In week 6? Wait till that game happens. You think it was bad tonight? Wait till that game happens. You're going to be sick to your stomach with the amount of times they bring up 28-3. Falcons Fury says, man, I missed that jingle so much. Check, check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Guess who? Muhammad Sanu just beat you. Okay. You adding a little flavor to it, man. A little remix. I hear you. Aries Falcon says, do you see this defense slowing down next week because of Vic being out? I don't know, because for me, Vic Beasley, while he led the league in sacks, to me, he's not a feared pass rusher in his league. You do want to account for him. I'm not saying that this guy isn't talented, because I'm a big Vic Beasley fan. But what I am saying is that he's not an immediate win off the snap type of pass rusher. He doesn't beat your right tackle right off the snap with just pure speed off the edge and get to your quarterback. A lot of times he gets sacks off of hustle, off of a quarterback holding on to the football, off of him going up the field and peeling back and the quarterback's rolling out of the pocket, and here comes Vic Beasley. Like he did tonight on that forced fumble, on that Aaron Rodgers lateral. Vic Beasley, that wasn't an immediate win. That was Aaron Rodgers holding on to the ball too damn long. He trying to scramble out of the pocket, and he looks up and look who's in his face. Vic Beasley crushing him, and he's trying to throw it at the same time, and boom, it's a fumble. And so I don't think it's going to impact you from a speed standpoint. Is it going to slow this defense down? What I think it will do is it's one less thing the opposing team has to worry about. So if he's not able to play, I think you guys have the Lions next week, if I'm not mistaken. What that does is it's one less pass rusher you got to account for if you're Matthew Stafford. On 3rd and 7, I don't have to worry about Vic Beasley coming off the edge now, and I don't have to worry about him peeling back after running the arc, not getting to me, my tackle pushing him around, but me thinking I've got some ability to scramble out and buy time, and I don't have to worry about him coming from behind and stripping me. That takes away that element, the fear of him off the edge. to that extent, but he's no Von Miller. He's no Justin Houston. He's no Joey Bosa. So we'll see. I just feel like he's missing that ingredient, that one ingredient and I think he's explosive enough to do it. I don't understand why he doesn't do it more, but he doesn't win right off the snap. Falcons Fury says, I still wish Julio got in the end zone, killing me in fantasy, LOL. Hey, look, man, and that's why I'm not a fantasy guy. I don't give a damn who does it, how we do it. Just score points, man. Just score points. Falcons Fury says, will the talking heads shut that F up about that hangover now? We just passed the breathalyzer test. Now take the cuffs off, ho. LMAO. I already told you I don't believe in the Super Bowl hangover whole thing. I explained it to you guys. If you look back at the last like 10 Super Bowl, I think I even went back as far as like 12 or 15 years ago at Super Bowl teams that lose in the Super Bowl. Most of those teams come back and make the playoffs the very next year. There's no such thing. People just love to come up with these false narratives. And for the most part, if you make it to the Super Bowl, you're a good football team. Like, the only way you're not going to come back and be the good team that you were the year previous is if you do something like the Denver Broncos, where you got Peyton Manning at quarterback, he decides to retire, and then the next year you got questions at the quarterback position. Yeah, that's going to affect you. You may not make it back to the playoffs the next year. But if you bring back basically the same team, and what I've found in my studies is that a lot of times when you make it to the Super Bowl, it's the same teams that are going. It's the Patriots, it's the Steelers, it's the same teams that are going in Seattle in the NFC. So when you see these teams making it to the Super Bowl and not winning, these are good football teams. So they're coming back the very next year, and they're still a good team. Their team is still intact. So they just come back and try to do it again. Now, will they make it to the Super Bowl again? Probably not. But I never bought into that whole hype, and we'll see if people will go ahead and just stop talking that nonsense. Bossaholic says, game was over at the half. Nitro defense was a nickname failed by Chris Collinsworth. Well, he got that from the Packers coaching staff. Dom Capers probably came up with the name for that defense. They call it the Nitro defense. He didn't make that up himself. They call it the Nitro defense. Like, teams come up with names for packages where you have certain guys on the field in this particular package, and so it's got a specific name. I mean, back in the early 90s, the Redskins were the ones that really started this whole different package thing under their old defensive coordinator, Richie Pettibone. He was the one that came up with nickel and dime packages, and those things took off. He was the guy that first really made it in vogue to sub in guys and smaller guys to combat 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, and bringing in faster linebackers to cover backs and tight ends. And so he had different names for these packages, these sub packages. And so now it's turned into this whole big thing where teams have these different names for sub packages. And the Packers called theirs Nitro, where they take a linebacker off the field and add an extra safety. And they really like Josh Jones, the rookie out of NC State. So that allows them to kick Morgan Burnett down into the box as another linebacker, but instead he's a safety, so he's a little bit more athletic. And so they call it the Nitro package, and it didn't really benefit them just because they were at a disadvantage. And like I said, the better team out-executed them and won, and that was the Falcons in this game. And yes, this game was over pretty much by half. I wasn't going to count Aaron Rodgers out, though, but that turnover, the pick play, pass interference, interception, and subsequent touchdown for the Falcons, that sequence of events for me was really what turned the tide of this football game. Falcons Fury says, hey man, we had our injuries too, but hope everyone okay. We fight through ours. Yours weren't as devastating as theirs were, though. I mean, just imagine if you had not only Ryan Schrader leave the game, but Jake Matthews leave the game as well. And then, not to mention, they took Julio from you, and then they said, all right, see if you can have the same type of effect offensively if that were to happen to your football team. That's what happened to the Packers, okay? Let's just say that throughout the course of the game, you lose early in the game, too. You lose Julio Jones, both of your tackles, and you did lose one of your tackles. Ryan Schrader did leave after the first touchdown. And on the defensive side of the football, let's say that you lost, and I guess Vic Beasley would be the equivalent, I guess, and he did leave the game, but it was later on in the game after he had already had an impact on the game. But let's just say you lose all those guys, and then somewhere in the third quarter, let's say they take Mohamed Sanu or Gabriel away from you, and now you got to go out and execute. So no Julio, no Gabriel, and no tackles. How does that impact your football team? Of course, you're able to battle through those injuries because you didn't sustain the same level of injuries that they did in this game. But again, it doesn't matter. In this league, guys are going to get hurt. That's what depth is all about. Next man up. You got to figure out a way to get it done. You did. They didn't. End of discussion. LL says the late third and fourth quarter was like deja vu. We always play that zone defense when we get a good lead. Big reason we lost the Super Bowl. I know a lot of Falcons fans always talk about that defense and that prevent defense, but that's just his MO. You got to remember that this is what your head coach Dan Quinn does. This is what they do in Seattle. Is they keep everything in front of them. And when you get a big lead, my thing isn't what you do on defense that upsets me and aggravates me. It's what you do offensively. It's like they take their foot off the gas pedal on the offensive side of the football. Now, granted, in the Super Bowl, I think it was the direct opposite. They were still aggressive to an extent that it allowed the Patriots to come back in the game. They were stopping the clock with incompletions, and they were too aggressive instead of running the football and just trying to take the air out of the ball. But again, I didn't fault them for that. A lot of people did, but if some things would have went their way in the ball game, they would have won the football game, and no one would have said anything about the aggressive nature of the Falcons. I like when teams stay aggressive offensively, but you have to do it to a certain degree. There's a time and a place for everything. I don't want you throwing it 3 times in a row and not eating up any clock and having 3 incompletions and then punting the football. There is something to be said about mixing in some runs or some short completions, just making sure the clock is still running, but there's a way to do it. I thought the Falcons handled those situations very well in this ball game where they completed some passes. They were able to run the football effectively. You want to see teams stay aggressive on the offensive side of the football. It's one thing to be less aggressive defensively, playing soft zone coverages and keeping everything in front of you because, again, the only thing that can hurt you is something cheap and deep over the top. You don't want to give that up, so you make sure everything stays in front of you because the clock is your best friend at that point. What I don't want to see happen is, yeah, you might give up some points, you might give up some yards on the defensive side of football. I don't want to see the offense stop being aggressive. And for the most part, the Falcons, even though they didn't score any more points because they didn't need to, I love the fact that they were able to eat up some clock, pick up some first downs, and put this game away when the time called for that to happen. Falcons Fury says, will people simmer down about questioning Sark, or will they keep hating cough cough Colin Cowherd's bitch ass? I don't know what Colin Cowherd is saying. I don't watch a lot of those shows, so I can't really get into that, the meat and potatoes of that. But of course they're going to question Sark because of how prolific this football team was from an offensive standpoint under Kyle Shanahan. I already told you how I feel about Kyle, and you know how I feel about him. And so you saw what their run game did in Seattle today. They fell short, but at one point, and I don't know how they accumulated these yards, but I looked up, and their running back had 14 carries for like 140-something yards against Seattle's defense. And so obviously there's probably a big 50, 60, 70-yard run in there for Carlos Hyde, but it doesn't matter. That's a ton of yards on a little bit of carries. And that's what Kyle Shanahan in that run game can do. So, yeah, there's going to be some people questioning Sark, especially when in the first game you go on the road and you barely squeak by Chicago, and everybody expected you to go put up 30-plus in that game and blow them out, and it didn't happen. And I don't know why people would expect that because, like I said, even though they got dominated, did the Bears in Week 2 versus Tampa on the road, Week 1 is always tricky, and so Sark is going to be fine. I don't know if this offense is going to be as dynamic as it was last year, but he's going to be fine. They've got enough weapons. If they stay relatively healthy, they will be just fine. Falcon Fury says, top 3 NFL stadiums, name them. I can't, and I would need you to specifically, if you're asking me home field advantage, I can do that. If you're telling me just off of, aesthetics, how does it look? I haven't even been to a ton of NFL stadiums. Just if you're just talking about how they look on TV, obviously the newer ones are going to be more appealing. The Jerry's World in Dallas, the Minnesota Stadium, this stadium here in Atlanta looks gorgeous. I mean, obviously the newer stadiums are going to be the ones that are going to catch your eye. But if you're talking about home field advantages, yeah, I could definitely give you the top 3 of those. But yeah, if you're just talking about the stadiums and the way they look, I wouldn't really be able to help you out there. But in any event, let's see. B says, Cardinals got the W, and I'm 13-2 in my picks. Yeah, this is a really good week if you just took care of business with the figuring out who was going to do what on the road. Because, that's always the biggest test is who's going to go on the road. You're going to have 3 or 4 teams every week that go on the road and win. You can figure out who can go on the road and win. Then you're probably going to do a good job. And this is a tricky week because there were some tough games in there. If you could navigate through some of those matchups like Pittsburgh, Minnesota, who knew that their starting quarterback wasn't going to start. Sam Bradford's going to be out. But if you can navigate through that one and the Jacksonville, because you still didn't know who Jacksonville was. I thought I knew who they were. And in Tennessee, if you could navigate through that one, the Thursday night game was a tough one. If you can navigate that one, you're going to come out on the right side of things this week because for the most part, there are enough games in there that there was no excuse not to get double digits this week. There are enough of those Tampa Bay home games. There are enough of those teams where you're like, okay, the Raiders are going to beat the Jets. There are enough of those games on the schedule that you should have felt confident that, okay, I should be able to win. I knew the Falcons were going to win this game. Even if the Packers were healthy, I fully expected the Falcons to find a way to win this game. And so there were enough of those games for you to feel good about getting double digits. So, in any event. All right. So, that's going to do it for the show tonight. No more comments. Appreciate you guys joining me on this program. Falcons dominate the Green Bay Packers in this football game. And like I said, at one point going into the fourth quarter, 34-10, this game was over. To me, the real big turning point of this game was right before the half. You get the OPI on Martellus Bennett, calling back a 36-yard gain by Randall Cobb. The next play ends up being a pick by Desmond Trufant. And after True was able to pick that off, you get the 4-play, 36-yard drive capped off by the touchdown pass to Coleman out of the backfield. That ran the score to 24-7 at the half. And at that point, I knew the Packers were in trouble with all the injuries, all the guys that were out. Pretty tough uphill battle and hill to climb on the road against this Falcons football team that I knew still wasn't done scoring for the night. They would tack on an additional 10 points in the third quarter and put this thing out of reach. And they ultimately win the football game 34-23. Packers drop to 1-1, go home to take on the Cincinnati Bengals in week 3. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons will be taking on the Detroit Lions. We'll see if the Lions come into that game at 2-0 or if they fall on the road on Monday night versus the Giants and drop to 1-1. We'll see what that game brings. But in any event, you got to feel good if you're the Falcons after getting this one and having the Lions come up next week. You should feel like you can take the Lions down and potentially get to 3-0. You look around in the division, Panthers dealing with a ton of injuries. The Saints are in disarray. And the Buccaneers, they're still a young football team. You could have a nice firm grasp on this division. And again, of course, you haven't played anyone in the division yet. Divisional play really hasn't started for this division. If I'm not mistaken, no one has played each other in this division to start this season. One of the few divisions that can actually say that no one in the division has played each other yet. And normally by this time, we would already have gotten a Falcons-Saints game for the last, seems like 3 or 4 years. We've been getting that game in week 1 or 2. They didn't do that this year. So we'll see what happens when you actually start getting into the division. The first divisional game takes place next week, Saints and Panthers. So we'll see how that goes. But Falcons 2-0, looking good to start this season off. As they get it done. Sunday Night Football opening up the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and what a gorgeous stadium it is. 34-23 victors over the Green Bay Packers. We'll see what those injuries are for both teams coming out of this game. A lot of injuries in this football game. Hopefully none of them serious, and both teams are able to go forward with healthy football players that can allow them to maximize their ability to win on the football field. That's going to do it for your man Louie T here on Sunday Night Football Overtime. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie T Network. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. Lockdown coverage all day today. So be tuned in for that. I'll be breaking down every single game that took place on Sunday, and we'll get to that as soon as possible. I may even drop one before I go to bed tonight. I don't know. We'll see. Bottom line is Falcons are 2-0. Packers are 1-1 after this ball game. So I'll see you tomorrow, or today I should say, for lockdown coverage. Come back and join your man Louie T. We're covering the league like a blanket. Help me do that by continuing to join me, supporting the movement. Make sure you subscribe, like the videos, share the videos. I'll see you next time. Packers drop to 1-1. Falcons get the win 34-23. Run their record to 2-0. I'll see you later. Have a good one.